Hi, everybody. Jai Baba. We're really excited to have you all here and to have Charles here to talk about his new book, Kissed by God. Here's this beautiful book that just came out. Most of you know that Charles has written a couple of other Baba books as well. Of course, Meher Baba the Awakener, fantastic introductory book to Baba. And just out a couple of years ago, The Day Becomes the Answer, Charles's book about Elizabeth Patterson, beautiful vignettes. So, of course, we have all those on our website. And we are recording this talk today, and it will be available on our YouTube channel. In a couple of days, we'll let you know. And I'm still letting people in, a couple here and there. Charles is going to talk about his book, and then we're going to have some time for questions. Charles, are you ready?
Yes, my husband wants to know if he can hear me yet.
I can hear him.
Yeah, you can hear me now. It was on mute.
Great to see you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's good. All right. So, Laura, does that mean that we're starting or we're waiting for people? What are we doing?
Whenever you're ready, I can continue to let people in.
Okay. Well, that's great. Well, it's wonderful to be with you all, and thank you for being here. I see so many wonderful friends from over the years, and it's, just one of the benefits of this difficult time we've been through is that we get to connect with people we haven't seen in a long time and actually see your faces, and so that's kind of the silver lining of all this. And Winnell, so wonderful you're here. My dear old friend Winnell, we don't see each other much, but so kind of you to be here. Marcia and Dave, and just so many wonderful friends. So thank you for everybody for being here. Well, the best place to start, of course, is to say thank you. And thank you to Meher Baba himself, because obviously we wouldn't be here today but for Baba. There would certainly be no book except for Baba. And truthfully, in my life, I owe everything to him. So I'm very deeply grateful to Baba. And I'm grateful to Baba's family throughout the world who have continued his work and his love, spreading his love and message of love and truth. So many people who've given their lives to him, so inspiring. So I'm grateful to the family of Baba's lovers. And of course, because we're looking at this book today, I'm so grateful to Share Foundation, not only for making this book possible and my book on Elizabeth, which is a real gift for me, but also just making Meher Baba available in so many ways to anyone who is interested and anyone who loves him. And such an extraordinary publications that, are going to be for the ages. So I'm very deeply grateful to Andy and Sheila and the board of Share Foundation for their work. Of course, the two Sheilas helped to make this book what it is, and Sheila Korinsky's incredible design really enhanced the book in so many ways. And when I hear from people about the book so far, people almost always mention the beautiful design and the way the photographs are merged into the text, and it's just so compelling, and it carries the stories forward, just how Sheila did it. So I'm very grateful to her. And Sheila Gamble, of course, was once again editor, as she was on the Elizabeth book, and has a wonderful eye for every little thing. And so the book is as close to perfect as it can be because of her wonderful work. And my husband, of course, Christopher, supported me throughout all of this and encouraged me to do this book. In fact, he encouraged me to do the Elizabeth book too. And when I just over the years would make a note here or a note there, he kept urging me to do a book. And so I think both books really are due to his love and support and encouragement. And then, of course, he reads drafts and makes improvements, suggests additions, which actually really improve the book a great deal. So I'm deeply grateful to Christopher. The quote at the beginning of the book is one of my very favorite quotes from Meher Baba, and in some ways I've come to think of it as the theme of not only this book, but of my life with Baba. And it just keeps coming back to me over and over again. So I'll start with that, and that's every moment I respond to the whole of creation. My response, being divine, is wholly from love. As Elizabeth would say, I think that says it all. And the theme that flows from those words of Baba's is captured in the photograph on the cover. That I'll hold it up again. The photograph of Baba embracing me. The obvious choice for the cover. A shout out to Dave Sherville, who took the photograph, the original. It was a little slide and enhanced and made it clearer, so one can see Baba's face much more clearly than in the versions I'd had for many, many years. And Dave, who's a wonderful photographer, enhanced it and brought out Baba's features. So that's, of course, the cover. And I should tell the story behind the cover, or read the story behind the cover, since this is a book event and one reads excerpts from the book at these things. And so I will read share the story behind that photograph. In those first Sahabas days, I placed myself strategically on the path where Baba passes, either walking with assistance or being carried in the chair. When Baba sees me, he smiles, reaches out, pats my head, or strokes my cheek. I quickly come to expect this special treatment, as though Baba is here just for me. One day, Baba gets out of the car and, supported by walking sticks, makes his way with Naraman to the door of the lagoon cabin. I stand in front of the crowd on one side of the path, waiting for him to pause and give me my now expected greeting. When Baba reaches me, however, he keeps on walking without so much as a glance in my direction. Stunned, I feel heartbroken. Baba is ignoring me. It is a new and deeply upsetting experience. Without thinking, I reach out, grab his sadra, and pull. Baba stops, hands his canes to Naraman, and turns to me. Seeing my tearful face, Baba gives me a beautiful smile, bends down, and enfolds me in his arms. Baba's embrace is captured on film. Mother, standing nearby, snaps a photo in that exact moment. Mother, it's a minor miracle. Mother has bought a new camera for the Sahabas, but apparently had no idea how to operate it properly. So for unknown reasons, perhaps her finger was over the lens, The photos she took during our time with Baba were black. All but one, that is. Preserved for posterity is the image of Meher Baba responding to a child's longing with a compassionate embrace. So a child with Meher Baba is my story, but of course it's also beyond my story. A child's story is really not their own. It's something that I think many can identify with and share, a child with Baba. And I think a child with Baba, like many other stories of Baba, but particularly with children, there's a glimpse of him, a kind of whiff of his fragrance that is just a very special thing. Baba interacting with children. And that those stories will of Baba with children will touch someone somewhere, sometime, when it's the right moment. And that's what motivated me to put these stories down, stories I've told for, I don't know, 50 years or more. Put them down because Baba has invested something of himself in the stories, as he has with every moment of his life, that will be revealed in time, will be experienced over time. I've always been very grateful that I was a child with Meher Baba because, for many reasons. Because first and foremost, a child, especially 8 years old, I'm almost 9, I really didn't have questions. I didn't have barriers. I didn't know very much either about Meher Baba. So there was an immediacy that one I don't think can have quite the same way as an adult, because there's just nothing between one and Baba as a child. There's no need to speak. And of course, that was perfect because Baba being silent, that was natural. It was natural not to speak, both for the child and for Baba. And I've said this many times before, and every time I say it, I think people may not quite believe it because it's so unusual, but it's true. It's my experience. So I just have to say, I did not really notice that Baba was silent when I met him. I just didn't notice it. I'm sure in the back of my mind, I must have known. I mean, there he was, gesturing. Someone was speaking for him. I didn't. It just didn't occur to me. And the only way I can explain that is that the way he communicated was so naturally him, was so Baba, that it didn't seem to me, I guess, on any level that it could be any other way. And I never thought about it being any other way. And, of course, he communicated constantly. Baba was very expressive, as you know, and I sometimes think adults might have missed out on some of this because, as adults, we look for other things or experience other things, or maybe we're thinking of other things. But with a child, the glance, the touch, the smile, and then of course Baba was very affectionate, especially with children, and the touching of the face, and just those little things Baba spoke all the time. And of course his humor which was just about constant. I mean, I sometimes don't think we focus enough on the fact that Baba was a very funny man. He was very humorous and found humor in just about everything. And uh, and so, you know, that communicates. I know sometimes it might be hard, people who don't know much about Baba, it might be hard to imagine, well, how does someone communicate if he's not speaking, or how can he communicate humor? And all I know is that, you know, Baba was very, it was extraordinary how he communicated humor, and love, and he seemed to be doing it in a way that everyone thought it was just for them, you know, that they were the only one there. I'm not sure just how Baba did it, but he did. So there's an immediacy. I've often wondered, well, why do I remember all this? You know, I mean, it's not that I had any special gifts, or, you know, I mean, I was a child. Why do I remember all this? And I say that because not everyone does. You know, I've over the years met people who were children around Bob and so forth, and you know, they have a few memories maybe, but in some cases they have almost no memory. So how is it? And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, part of it, I, as a child, was very introverted, and still am, but I was very self-conscious, introverted. So I think that kind of child, when one is really taken with something or someone, then it gets internalized more than with maybe more extroverted children. I don't know. But I thought I would read a passage that kind of is a glimpse into how I struggled with taking Baba in. And so maybe the fact that I struggled with taking Baba in was why I took him in. But anyway, this was a moment from 1962 at the East-West Gathering. On the second morning of darshan, I am sitting next to Meher Baba's knee, staring intently into his face. Baba sways gently, listening to ghazals being sung for him. Baba's graceful movement, combined with the rhythmic beat of drums, has a hypnotic effect. My eyes slowly begin to close, and just as they begin to shut, a hand suddenly covers my face like this. My eyes fly open, and through the splay of Baba's fingers, I see him smiling at me. Keep awake. Baba does not want anyone dozing in his presence. At one point, Baba picks up the hem of his sadra and says, "Hold on to my daman with both hands. Love me more and more, and I will take you where I go." My eyes fix on Baba. As I try to grasp the enormity of what he's saying, the significance of this moment in his presence, I become anxious. What more can I possibly do to take it all in? I have only these few days with him, and my capacity to absorb the experience and deepen my connection with him feels so small and limited. Darshan will soon end, and I may never again have this opportunity. So as I struggle with this dilemma, Baba turns and looks directly into my eyes. Reaching down, he grabs my chin and shakes my head vigorously from side to side, like that. Inwardly, I hear Baba say, "Don't worry, just enjoy this moment. Remember, you can only receive what I choose to give." With that admonition, I let go of all worry and anxiety, content now just to be in his presence. And for the remainder of the darshan, Baba gives me what he knows I need, no more, no less. As Erich would say, we each have our portion. So let me share something about the title. I never forget when I told Michael Siegel, my dear friend, that he asked the title of the book that I was thinking about writing, and I said, "Kissed by God." He said, "Oh, wow, it better be good." I realized, yeah, that does set up an expectation. Kissed by God. So it has a sort of double meaning, if you will. And the first meaning is drawn from a precious moment that I had with Baba at the East West gathering. So I thought I would share that. Morning darshan has just ended. Meher Baba remains seated, watching as his Western lovers reluctantly trickle out of the room. I linger, hoping for a reprise of the previous 2 mornings when Baba called me over for an extra embrace. Mother is by my side as we back out ever so slowly toward the door. Baba's gaze sweeps the hall and lands on us. Looking at Mother and pointing to me, he gestures the sign of perfection. I take him to mean I am pleased. Then he looks into my eyes, opens his arms, and something new, purses his lips as though to give a kiss. Without hesitation, I race across the room into his arms. With eyes closed, I kiss Baba full on the lips. Soft, warm, tender, a moment of pure bliss. When I open my eyes, Baba's looking at me with what seems like surprise. I suddenly wonder if he meant for me to kiss him. In the next moment, my question vanishes as Baba enfolds me in his embrace. And for the next 10 years, I say nothing to anyone about the kiss. It feels too intimate to share. Although Mother is a witness, we never speak of it. Then one morning, walking with Erich near Meherazad, he suddenly stops, turns to me, and says, "So, you kissed him?" Startled, I reply, "Yes, Erich." In that moment, I felt is what Baba wanted me to do. Erich smiles, shakes his head in wonderment, and says, "We Mandali were amazed. You were very fortunate. It was something we had not seen." The second meaning of kissed by God is summarized by this cartoon I saw. So I'll read this. This is now from the epilogue. So if you haven't read the book, I have a prologue which gives a little bit of of my life before meeting Baba, just to give a flavor, because the book isn't about my life. It's not an autobiography. It's not a memoir about Charles. It's about Baba, and I hope that that's what comes across. It's about Baba with a child, and so it wasn't meant to be my life story, But I did know that one has to set the stage with what was happening before, and so a brief prologue, and then an epilogue, because I think the questions then are, of course, what happens, and I don't give everything that happens after meeting Baba or being with Baba, but I give, enough to give a flavor of what happened, or still is happening. So this is from the epilogue. Paging through a magazine one day, a cartoon catches my attention. It depicts an emaciated, decrepit, ancient-looking man sitting alone high on a mountaintop. His white beard and hair are long and unkempt. His few clothes are in tatters. And the caption reads, "He was kissed by God." Well, like all good jokes, the cartoon is funny because, as Erich might say, it is so true. I can visualize Baba's silent laughter, enjoying the humor of the divine jest. After all, what is the spiritual journey if not a losing game? We must lose ourselves in order to find ourselves, Baba says. Thus, loss itself is gain. We must die to self to live in God. Thus, death means life. Keeping company with Baba, debris of ego life, our accumulated flotsam and jetsam, is gradually swept away by the beloved, often without the lover even knowing it. At the end of the journey, Baba promises, we are stripped naked of all impressions and attachments that separate us from him. Only God remains. When you go, Baba says, then I come. Reflecting on my journey in this lifetime with Baba, I now see how Baba takes away the rhinestones, as Elizabeth would say, only to give the diamond of his love. Of course, I still retain considerable baggage, but I can honestly say that Baba has lightened my load. Loss can be difficult, no doubt, and suffering is no joke. But in my experience, the beloved mitigates the pain through love, grace, and Baba being Baba, constant humor. I think I begin the epilogue with a quote from Baba that sets out that theme better than I can. So I'll give you that now. And that's the quote where Baba, in the highest of the high, tells us that he's the great taker. And in taking, of course, he becomes the great giver. Baba says, know you all, that if I am the highest of the high, my role demands that I strip you of all possessions and wants, consume all your desires, and make you desireless rather than satisfy your desires. Sadhus, saints, yogis, and walis can give you what you want. But I take away your want and free you from attachments and liberate you from the bondage of ignorance. I am the one to take, not the one to give what you want or as you want. So finally, let me offer since I have this lovely opportunity to talk about the process of writing this book, which, one doesn't get to share very often. So let me say a few things about that. A few friends have asked, well, did you go over your talks? Talk, which I never listened to. I really cannot. Like a lot of people, I guess, I have a hard time listening to myself. So no, I didn't go over any of the talks that I'd given, where I, of course, have related a good many of these stories. Even some articles that I wrote with these stories in it. I did not go back and draw from them or reread them. Early on, Christopher said, well, you could, you've written this and you've written that. Maybe you could, instead of starting fresh, just use some of that. And so I made a decision not to look at any of it. And what I had in mind in making that decision was I really wanted to live the stories now. And of course, I might have told them a little differently at different times or with different emphasis. Erich, of course, is the master of that. His stories take on a very different shape and meaning and detail depending on when he's giving it and who the audience is. And I think anyone who speaks about Baba or tries to tell their story, many of you who tell your story, it's going to be a different telling when you describe your coming to Baba or your experience of Baba. It's going to be different at different times in one's life. I mean, that's just how memory works and how we change, and that influences the stories, I think, of our lives with Meher Baba. Well, all the stories of our lives. Truth be told, I don't remember much of other stories of my life, early life. I don't. It's kind of it's kind of vague. It's as though those stories are all in black and white and kind of hazy, and the stories that when I was with Baba are all in Technicolor. They're very vivid. That's just always the way it's been. Fortunately, Baba was a gift. Baba let me experience those stories as being alive, and I think retelling them in different places, thanks to many of you giving me that opportunity, has not only kept them alive but made them different and alive in new ways. Elizabeth used to say about Meher Baba that when someone asked, well, why, I think a minister asked, and I think I put this in the book on Elizabeth, but, well, Mrs. Patterson, if it's the same message of love that Jesus came, why do you need, Meher Baba? And one time she looked to him and said, well, all I can say is, each time it is lived, it is new. And I think that about the stories. Each time they're told, they're new. And so I wanted them to be new. The poem I put in the beginning of the book from Witter Benner gives a flavor of somehow how this happens with Baba, with someone like Baba. These encounters that later become something else. He called it lightning. There is a solitude in seeing you, followed by your company when you are gone. You are like heaven's veils of lightning. I cannot see until afterward, how beautiful you are. There is a blindness in seeing you, followed by the sight of you when you are gone. So I was striving to capture the living experience because these stories, for me, have never been about the past. They've always been about the present. And I wanted to capture that as best I could. And that led to my other important decision, besides not going over what I said before, how I framed it before, at the risk, of course, of contradicting myself. But I also wanted to, so the second important decision that came to me in struggling to write it, and frankly, it came to me after a lot of false starts, means I would start to write down some of these stories. This happened, that happened, and it just didn't seem natural. And I was very self-conscious, of course. Writing about oneself, writing about Elizabeth was a joy and easy. And that book is really Elizabeth. I mean, it's what she said, and it's her wisdom and her presence and so forth. And conveying that. So that was a joy and easy. But once you're in the story, more than I was in the Elizabeth stories, it becomes more difficult not to be in the story and be self-conscious about it. So starting to write them down, I felt very self-conscious. Speaking about it never made me feel quite that way, but writing it down, I started to feel very self-conscious about everything I was writing down. So I stopped, and then I would pick it up again later and try again, and didn't work. And then I read somewhere, because I have a number of books, memoirs. I like reading memoirs, and I read somewhere that about someone who'd written a memoir in the present tense, and I didn't remember reading such a memoir, so I looked at an excerpt from that book. And I loved the immediacy of it. And so I thought I would try to see if I could write it in the present tense. I realized quickly that the prologue and the epilogue could not be in the present tense, because, especially the prologue, because I was a very small child, and and so forth. And I needed to make observations and connections that a child would not make and did not make. So bracketing those off, how about being with Baba? Can I put those in the present tense? And then somewhere in the story sometimes make references, like I did with Erich, walking with him in Meherazade, that are of another time. So I tried that, and it actually flowed beautifully for me and was a joy, because in the present tense, I was living each one. And as though for the first time. And it gave me the opportunity to really live each one and put down the detail that sometimes I hadn't remembered in a long time. Those of you who've heard me tell some of these stories, you will notice, if you read the book, that there are details that I've just not conveyed before, that came to me as I told the story, picturing it as it happens. So that's why the stories are in the present tense. And it also conveys, this is the child's direct experience. This is not, of course it is me writing it, but I mean, it's meant to be in the voice of the child as much as possible. And of course, two different children. I mean, an 8-year-old or almost 9-year-old is not a 13-year-old. someone asked me the other day, where did you have a different voice, from the 1958 chapter or part to the 1962? And I hadn't thought about it too much, but yes, it clearly is a different person. A 13-year-old is on the cusp of, adulthood. It is a pivotal time in a young man's life. It's when, of course, in many religions, one's initiated into adulthood. So it's quite different from being a small child. And I think that comes through when writing in the present tense, which might not come through if I tried to write the whole thing in the past tense. I'm not sure I would have had different voice would have come through. Anyway, that was a critical decision. I mean, if you read it and like it, then you'll agree with me. You may not, but I'm very happy with that. I feel like Baba helped me with that. Also, Elizabeth also used to say quite frequently, Baba is in the now. And over the course of my life, that has deepened in significance for me. I don't know if I paid much attention when she said it all those years ago exactly. I mean, I did, but I'm not sure what it meant to me then. But over the years, Baba is in the now has grown more and more significant for me. And that's why I wanted these stories to be in the now, because they are in the now. I mean, not to be, I don't know what Baba does and how he does it. I'll just say that. I don't know. But my feeling is that everything he did in his physical life is in the now. In other words, everything he did, we would say, reverberates and is experienced by people in what we call the future, or at some point. But it was all in the now. And of course, from Baba's perspective, he tells us this. That's how he sees it and experiences it. So we say, well, such and such a story touches me so much. I've heard people say, I heard this story about Baba with a dog or something. I've been told this. And that's when I came to recognize him, when I heard that story. Why is that? Because I feel when that happened, way back then in the 1930s, it happened now in that person's life. And Baba knew that. Baba knows that. That's why stories of Baba are so critical. I mean, unfortunately, there are just endless stories, and they are each going to keep unfolding and unfolding and unfolding because there's so much power in each story that has yet to be realized. Someone in the future will be waiting for that story, that one particular story, and will then recognize that's Bob, or that's who I really am. That's the self that I am searching for. That's that recognition, and it often is. Sometimes it's also through an image of Bob for some people, and that's why we're blessed that there's so many images. For first time in human history, that there are actually images of the avatar. And not surprisingly, because this Baba says is the greatest manifestation in a great cycle of time. So naturally, the ways in which people will recognize Baba in themselves are much more available in many different ways than ever before. That's how I would put it. It reminds me of the day that, and I think this is in Elizabeth's book, but a book about Elizabeth, but when Elizabeth was showing us photographs that she had taken of Baba. You know, she took many, many, many beautiful photographs, and Mother was picking out photographs for Treasures from the Meher Baba Journals, the book that she put together. And so Andy Boo brought out all these photographs for Mother to choose from. Very sweet. So it was a feast. You know, we were looking through all these photographs, some of which I'd never seen before. And Mother was picking this and picking that. And she picked up one and she said, "Oh, you know, this doesn't really look like Baba. This is, you know, not very flattering to Baba." And she put it aside, you know. And Elizabeth said, "Well, no, not to you." But she said, "You know, when I took many of these photographs, I took them to show to Baba. And as we were going through the photographs, Baba, you know, going through means going through this. She had printed out all these different photographs, and one came up that Elizabeth thought was not flattering of Baba, and she said, "Oh no, let's take this out. Let's just take this one away. This is not nice of you, Baba." And Baba said, "No, no, no, don't take any away. You may not see that is beautiful, but Baba said one day someone will. It will touch someone's heart." So Baba's in the now because he imbued everything he did and said with the now. I quote this beautiful thing Baba said in 1958 at the Sahavas in Myrtle Beach in the book that captures this in a lovely way. So Baba said, this was in the barn one day during the 58 Sahavas, and Baba said, "What happened yesterday? Nothing. What will happen tomorrow? Nothing. All happens now. The experience of everything happening at this very moment is Dayan, knowledge, wisdom. It has nothing to do with the mind, reason. One who has this experience of eternal knowledge, Dayan, is wise. Mind says, it was yesterday that Baba was here. Baba gave us a discourse, and we all listened. And the children had a party. And mind also says, tomorrow we will have a performance. But one rare one being knows that there is no such thing as yesterday or tomorrow. There is the eternal now, from the beginningless beginning to the endless end. There is one moment only, the eternal now. He who experiences the eternal now finds all doubts, worries, everything dissolved like mist and remains in eternal bliss. So Baba is with us now. He is as present and with us now as he ever was or ever will be. Because there is no past and there's no future. There's only now for Baba. So he's always now. And what he asks of us, he says time and again, is to become more and more aware of the truth that he gives, that God is fully present, fully with us now. And through love, Baba awakens us to this reality, which finally, he says, is the only reality. Jai Baba, everyone. Thank you for letting me share.
Charles, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, it's such a treat to hear these stories firsthand on your face and your heart. It's just beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
You know, this cover of yours, this photograph, it's grown on me more and more. And just the beauty of that gesture of holding on to him like that is just, it's fabulous. I remember hearing a Hafez quote one time where he said something like, reach back through the millennia and grab hold of my beard. And it makes me think of that forever presence that you're talking about. Thank you. So we're going to open up now for questions. There's 2 ways you can do a question. I'm putting in the, one way is at the bottom of your screen. There's a little smiley face that says reactions. If you click on that, there's a place to raise your hand. It'll show a digital hand. And I can go through in whatever order that people raise their hand. I've also posted in the chat kind of a shortcut to do that. And of course, if you rather ask your question through the chat, we can do that too. So we're just opening up for questions. Thanks. Lorraine just made a comment. She said, thank you so much, Charles. It was well worth getting up at 3 a.m. in the morning.
That's a big compliment right there.
I also loved your choice of writing in the present tense. Absolutely makes it so alive. It was a great choice.
Thank you. Well, the good thing is that the editor liked it.
Another comment from Seppi. She said, thank you, Charles. Always so heartwarming and inspiring. Such humility. And we got a question from Mary Bennett. I think I unmuted her.
Yep.
There you are.
Mary, hey, Mary.
Barrett.
Mary Barrett.
I don't know if I have a question. I just wanted to say, Charles, it's just, you bring Baba so deeply into my heart. And, I could start crying now, and the longing, and I feel like a child so much with Baba. And just knowing you when we were younger, and, just, it gives me such a feeling of belonging and connection whenever I'm able to listen to you speak. And you gave me that picture years and years and years ago as a gift. And it's just a treasure for me. So I won't take up any more time, but I really miss you and I love you a lot.
Thank you, Mary. That touches me very much. And of course, yes, I remember our days together when we were younger, but it's wonderful with Baba that the connection is always there. It's always now. It really is. I feel the same. Yeah.
Jai
Baba. Jai Baba.
We have a question from my sister Shelley in the chat. She says, do you recall the moment, perhaps before meeting Baba, that you realized Baba was God?
Oh, good question. Before meeting Baba, not at all. No, nothing at all, because first of all, Mother didn't tell us very much. And we did know Elizabeth and Kitty beginning in the summer of 57, leading up to Baba coming in May of 58. And that was, wonderful. We would visit them and not Delruba, Yupon Dunes, the center. But Elizabeth and Kitty, in their wisdom, I would say, didn't talk about Baba to the children. They lived Baba. I mean, I look back and I realized that your question really did get answered, and I didn't know it. Because being around Elizabeth and Kitty, who never talked about themselves, never talked about their time with Baba, never gave me things to look at or read or picture, and nothing. But being around them, I now realize, was when I knew who he was. I didn't know consciously, but they were transparent to him in their selflessness, their kindness, their love. So what, but consciously, no, we weren't, and Mother was very hesitant about, talking about it with us. I mean, understandably, she had not had her own inner experience. She loved Elizabeth and Kitty and, and all that. And she wanted to meet Meher Baba. And in fact, the original plan was that people were going to go to India to be with a kind of East-West gathering in 1958. It wasn't going to be Baba coming here at all. Now, if he had kept to that plan, I would not have met Baba then, because I would have been too young to go, I think. So Mother would have gone, and she would have gone, probably. But she had not had an inner experience, so she was drawn, interested, but hesitant about Meher Baba. And Elizabeth would give her, from time to time, a photograph or something like that. But the only one photograph that she would put out in our home was Meher Baba holding the lamb. Elizabeth took that picture, and Rano took a similar picture, but the same thing, Meher Baba holding a lamb. And that was the only one. It reminded Mother of Jesus. And so she was very, very drawn to that picture. But other than that, we didn't have pictures of Baba, and she didn't talk about him and all that. And so when we were to go meet him when he finally came, it was not a complete blank slate. I'm sure I knew more than I remember knowing, because you pick things up and so forth. But I now feel very fortunate that I didn't know very much or wasn't told very much, because that allowed me to have my own direct experience of Baba. So, no. And as to being God, I don't know how to put this, but being with Baba in 1958, I fell in love with Baba. There's no question. I was just besotted with Baba as soon as I saw him. And whether he was God or not was irrelevant to me. I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think about that. It didn't seem. I'm sure if someone said he's God in human form, or the incarnation of God, that's okay. But he was so much more than that to me, if that makes any sense. And I was a little anxious that other people would crowd in on him because he was, he was going to break his silence and so forth and so on. So I was starting to get anxious that this was going to be a worldwide thing, and then I would be pushed to the back. So I'm not so sure I wanted to focus on that part. My husband has his hand up. What say you, Christopher?
Yeah, well, first thing is to answer the question from Elizabeth about the painting behind you, which is a beautiful pastel that Dale Drager in Oregon gave us of her own painted version of that photograph of Baba embracing
Yes.
Charles. But just a couple things, that I saw just from being with Charles while he was working on this in the Elizabeth book is it's remarkable that he was able to do those two books, because many of he's been dealing with a kind of chronic syndrome related to Lyme disease, and which really causes a lot of fatigue, they'll go on for long periods of time. But nevertheless, he was up every morning working on these books every day, in spite of not feeling good physically. So, he really just poured himself into it. And then the other thing is just I've heard these stories so much over the years, but something about this seemed new in the way Charles wrote them. And, I think in the book, what they're such a distillation of a lifetime of replaying these memories, finding new depths of meaning in his life for them. And somehow that's all crystallized in the way he tells them here. And something else Charles I don't think would say is that both the Elizabeth book and this book have provoked such reactions in people where they will write and say, I was going through a really hard time. And then I turned to this page in your book, and there it was. Like, this spoke to me exactly with what I'm going through, or a question I had always had. And to me, that really is like what Charles is saying about the eternal now. That's how Baba works, that by giving Charles these experiences as a child, and then Charles writing them, and then those stories going out to the readership, it is part of this all, unfolding of this plan of reaching hearts and awakening hearts. And of course, none of that would be possible if it weren't for Sherry R. Books and Andy and the remarkable work of Sheila and Laura Smith, for all those years since Andy and Sheila pioneered this, all the hearts that they've touched through these books is such a unfathomable contribution to Baba's life and work.
Yeah, that's so true. Thank you, sweetheart. That's beautiful. And yes, you can say things that I can't say. And I appreciate that. I'd like to say something though about the illness part, because it's fascinating to me. It goes back to Baba talking about that he takes, and if it weren't, and I don't want to sound as though I'm glossing over the fact that people suffer a lot. Sometimes even the closer one is to Baba, you see even Mara suffered more than any of us can ever imagine. Her head fracture was the worst the doctor had ever seen, and no one survives that kind of head fracture, And so she was near death. And she was the closest of all. So yes, suffering is not something one wants to gloss over or say, oh, it doesn't matter, or, it's all just Baba's work. It's real, and people have struggles in their lives with Baba and just in general. So having said that, just my little piece of it, I'm reminded of Voltaire's image that I'll paraphrase, where he says, we all complain about how much suffering we have, and he says, but if we all came together throughout the world with the intention of taking our sufferings and piling it all into one huge pile with the intent of dividing it up equally amongst us all, he said most of us would be content to take our piece and shrink away. That's how I feel. My little piece, is certainly not comparable to so many others, but illness I realize now that if it weren't for this illness, I wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have probably written these books. At least, well, maybe someday, or if I live. But Baba took away my career mostly, and I wouldn't have probably stopped. Knowing me, I would have probably gone on, and this made me stop and focus on what was really in my heart to do with the energy and the time I had. And that was a gift. And whenever I don't feel well, I think, what a gift. What a gift. So that's the thing about life with Baba. He doesn't take away suffering. On the contrary, he doesn't sort of make us all just have a wonderful life, but he finds ways to mitigate it, to bring something beautiful and joyful into it that makes us feel his fragrance, no matter how hard things are. And so I just wanted to share that because this book came out of that realization that it's a gift.
Thanks, Charles. We have someone raising their hand, but I wanted to read something from the chat quick from Lorraine, poor Lorraine at 3 a.m. She said, just like with Francis Brabazon, Francis never talked about his relationship with Baba. In my hearing, at least, it was all in his poetry. With us young ones, he was just very natural and practical. And as you said about Elizabeth and Kitty, he simply lived Baba. So she made that comment. And then David has a question.
Here we go.
There's
Is there an echo?
There's an echo, yeah.
There's two of you, David.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to tell you. I don't know why it's echoing so much.
Because you're on two different screens. So let's. So she just muted one. So now speak and see if we can hear.
Okay. Much better. One.
That's good.
Sorry, it's not really working, David.
I don't know why you have two computer screens going here, but
I was wondering too. Are there two devices or?
Thanks.
Okay. There's another comment.
David, maybe you can put your comment in the chat and just.
Good idea.
Because you're on audio and two devices, someone says, and that's probably the issue. Yeah, I don't know where the other device is, but.
I have a few other mentions in the chat from Xerxes. He says, thank you very much for sharing such heartwarming stories, Charles. Do you have any plans to sell signed copies of your book?
Well, I don't sell them. And I'll just say, the good thing about Shariar is it's not a royalty issue, so I don't have to feel like I have to sell books to have an income. Not that it would be much of an income anyway. Christopher and I laugh. We get royalty checks from time to time from books we've done in our professional career, and we're in a competition to see who can get the smallest royalty check, and I'm winning. I think I got one for $1.31 the other day, which I think I'm going to frame it. But Christopher's books Christopher edited a book on the heirs of Saint Teresa, which has sold several thousand copies. And he got a recent royalty check for that for $94. And I thought, boy, that's riches. And the book, in our little book world of esoteric books. No, I mean, that's a sweet question about signing. I wish, because that was so much fun to be at Shariar signing. So maybe on some trip to Myrtle Beach. And of course, I'd be delighted to sign and scribe books. It's always such an honor, right? But so it'll have to be some venue like that when we're all able to be in person, I guess. Or send it to me and I'll send it back. You can do that too.
Okay, I think this is from David, the one that we weren't getting before. He says, Charles, I wanted to thank you for this inspiring work in your presentation that will inspire many throughout time.
Thank you, David. That's very beautiful. Thank you so much. Very, very beautiful.
So is anybody
Hello, Winnell. Winnell. So Winnell and I go back to my early career. And is Ed with you there too? Hi, Ed. So Winnell, I actually performed their wedding. Yeah. And they're still married. How many years? Unmute.
Oh, I gotta unmute her. Where is she?
Unmute. Yeah.
Winnell.
Winnell. Did you get her? Can she
I'm
unmute?
asking her to unmute.
Can you unmute yourself? Technology. Ed.
Oh, now.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So how many years?
Well, it was, it's 33.
33.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Almost as long as I've known you.
Yes. Yes. And in case you can't tell, huh?
Charles, we remember you're telling these stories with the hand motions, and you know, we really remember that well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Good memories.
they're in Alabama.
Actually,
and,
we're at Chincoteague.
Oh, you're Chincoteague. Oh, okay. Your other place. Okay, great.
Yeah. Well,
I'm so happy to see you both. It's wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Well,
and,
we have your book, but we just got it, so we haven't read it yet, but we're looking forward to it.
And the marriage worked. Thank you.
And we were happy to attend your wedding too.
Yes. Yes. I want to see you guys.
I have another comment in the chat from Krishna Malakapali. He says, always a treat hearing you talk about Baba and his love for us. Thank you for the book. We'll certainly buy and read.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Andy likes to hear that. You know, Andy, talk about losing game, right? So Andy starts this thing with Sheila, and of course they know there's not going to be a big market for all these things, but if that was the reason they did it, they would not do it. But having said that, the future will be, this will be the treasure trove for people. These various things that you've published and republished, the Wayfarers. Oh my gosh, so many beautiful books. Mani. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, sales have gone down over the last 50 years.
Is that true? Well, after today, they're going to go back up.
All right, great.
They're going to go way up.
All right. Well, it looks like
anyone else?
Questions, comments? Oh, someone said, Charles, you need to do an audio version because hearing the stories in your wonderful voice makes them even more immediate, personal, and meaningful.
Well, that's so kind. I hadn't even thought of that, but now that you say it, that might be a fun thing to do.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, wonderful to do.
Okay, we have a question from Alan M.
Hi.
Hi. Hello, Adrian. Hello, Alan.
Hi. I just wanted to reiterate this that it would be so awesome if you did an audio book, because I was talking about this the other day with my mother-in-law, and she was like, she loves audiobooks, and I just imagined her hearing your voice, and it would just be so awesome. That's all. Because your voice is very serious, and you speak in a way that really evokes this calm Baba presence that is very unique, and it should be captured.
Well, thank you. On one condition.
Okay.
That you do a song with the book.
Oh my gosh. I will. That's such a good idea. And then I'll do a competing album where I just sing the whole book. Just sing it. Or it could be a companion CD. I would love that. That would be so wonderful.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Jake has his little hand up.
Yeah. Why am I not unmuting Jake? There we go.
Hello, Charles.
Hello, Jake.
Yeah, it's wonderful. This is a delightful talk. I really enjoyed listening for the parts that I was able to. And I particularly love hearing the story of you kissing Baba. That is just superb experience. And I'm rather jealous, I must say, first off, but so grateful that you can share that here with us. And I just was curious, you said you felt, in the moments of the kiss, you felt pure bliss. Is that an experience that kind of stayed with you afterwards? Was it an immediate, shock back into reality after that experience? What was the experience after the moments you had described?
As best I can bring it back, I was in a little bit of a state of shock myself. Something I never imagined, right? I never imagined kissing Baba on the lips. So I think I was just frozen in my head. I mean, I just didn't know what to think or feel. I do remember backing out. I didn't want to turn my back on Baba, so I backed out. And I think I backed out the whole room. It's a big room too, but I just couldn't turn my back. And Baba was looking at me and smiling. But that feeling, it comes back. I mean, it's not ever lost. I mean, it's one of the things that I felt after 1958 being with Baba was one of the things is I can't remember what he feels like physically. And I sort of made a little determination in my head that when I saw him again, and I was convinced we would see him again, I just didn't know when, that I would make an effort to focus, because for me at least, I don't know what it was for others, but I was so caught up in being with Baba that I didn't focus on, the physical feeling of touching him or his embrace, it just, so I had a hard time remembering what his body felt like. And so I had this in my mind. And when I first greeted Baba in 1962, when I embraced him, I made a point of rubbing my face against his cheek, first on one side and then on another. I'm not sure what Baba made of that, but that was my effort to sort of see if I could remember. So it's interesting because 62, and I haven't thought about this until this very moment, so it's unformed in my mind, but at 62 seems to me there is a thread that runs through some of these stories, and that is feeling him physically. So the kiss, of course, being the most unusual and unexpected. rubbing his cheeks, touching his feet. There's a whole story about touching his feet, kissing the back of his head at Rano's direction. So a lot of the stories actually are about that. So it's interesting because it's as though Baba said, if this is what you want, this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to experience. And I've never forgotten any of those moments. They feel very alive and present for me right now. Right now, this minute, they do. Years later, I would see films of Baba. I would see him look at someone and purse his lips. And that's when I got the notion that maybe he was surprised. I thought it was an invitation to come and kiss him, but maybe he was just reading me. So I've seen him do that in films. I mean, you probably have too. He purses his lips. But no, of course, Baba being Baba, I accept that it was meant to be. But Jake, I don't want to. It's a great blessing to have been with Baba in the physical body. So I don't want to, sort of say, well, deflect that and say, well, Baba, is experienced deeply, whether one's seen him physically or not, and in fact, he is recognized and experienced in the way that is right for each person. And there are people who are with him physically, obviously, many, many people who, liked Baba or had a nice experience. They didn't recognize because that wasn't their moment, right? So body was beautiful and important, but it wasn't their moment. And maybe, like my mother, it would come in the middle of the night. It came to her in the middle of the night, not in his physical presence at all. So the physical presence is certainly beautiful and wonderful. And I want to be with him again when he takes another body. But it isn't the necessary condition for a deep experience of recognition, quite the opposite. I mean, I know many people since Baba has left the physical body who seem to recognize and know him better than I do, and better than many people who met him physically. And that's the God's truth. And Baba told the Mandli, as you know, he told them that you will see that. And they did. They saw people come who knew Baba in a way that they had not experienced before. So I'm not, again, trying to take away from the beauty of being with him physically and the longing to be with him physically. But I guess what I'm leading up to, Jake, is to say, why is it that you long for that? Or when you hear the story of that, you feel, I wish I could do that. That's a gift. Not everyone has that gift. In fact, very few do. But those who do are those who he is with. And I feel will be with him when he takes form again. So that's the great blessing. If you respond to that story, it is because you are in it, you're in the story, and you will be there when he comes again.
We have another question or comment from Marta Flores, but before I get to that, there's a comment from Elizabeth saying, "Thank you, Charles. I feel like because of your sharing, being kissed by God, we all have been."
That's very beautiful.
So I'm going to ask Marta to unmute.
It was, by the way, my first kiss.
Oh.
Just to say, I should have stopped while I was ahead.
Charles, thank you. It's Marta in Santa Barbara.
Hi, Marta.
Hi, Charles. I can't help but think the last time I heard you speak, which was not very long ago, you mentioned Elizabeth's sexual preference, which I'd never heard. And I thought, oh my God, what a jewel. And now you're telling us that you kissed Mayor Baba on the lips. And I'm thinking, oh my God, another jewel. And then I thought, isn't it interesting that your masculinity kissed Baba's masculinity and divinity on the lips? And here you are, a spokesperson for sexual equality and everything that you and Christopher have been through. And then this question came into my mind, and forgive me, but in all the years that you have been with Amandali and heard the stories of all of them, did you ever from anyone ever hear that Baba kissed Mara on the lips?
Did I hear that from them?
Yes. Did anybody ever tell a story about Baba kissing Mara on the lips that you recall?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I just assumed that would be the case.
Uh-huh. I never assumed that. So that's
I
why
don't know.
I know.
Somebody might know. It's an interesting question because maybe my assumption was based on something I heard, but I don't remember hearing ever that. Mara did tell me when I was early, like 1970 or 71, and there were very few people there. And I think Carol Teich and I, we were there were only a few Westerners. And so we were on the porch with Mara and Meru. And so Mara, one day, she wanted to tell me the story of Ramakrishna being accused of sexual relations with one of his disciples and how they tried to trick him and test him to prove that it was true. And I don't remember the whole thing, but the bottom line is that he showed them that it was untrue through that test. And then she went on to say that she wanted me to know that she and Baba had no sexual relations. Why she wanted me to know this, why she told me this, she never mentioned it again. All those years, but she was very emphatic that I know that. Maybe for posterity, maybe for me to be clear, about the relationship. So your question makes me remember that afternoon on the porch, because I was really taken aback that she would share such a thing with me. I would never even thought of it, actually. I would never have thought of it, but I think she wanted it on the record in my head, at least, in my mind, in my thinking. But no, I don't know. I mean, the images of her and the films and the pictures certainly show a real physical intimacy between them, and but beyond that, I know her.
Thanks, Charles.
There's another comment from Jake Lawton. He just says, thank you for your reflection and inspiration, Charles. I hope to be there with you when Baba returns.
Absolutely. It's a deal.
And another comment from Lorraine. There is a most beautiful scene in a film of Baba in Marazad Garden when Baba takes Mara's hand and kisses her hand. And the love in that gesture and the glance between the two of them was so stunningly intimate, yet pure, that it has seared itself into my mind as the image of love.
Yes. Yes, that's very beautiful. Yeah, I remember that film clip. That's so beautiful.
Not seeing any more hands or comments. Oh, here comes one. Charles Fazzanaro says, "Thank you all for all you have done and for the deep friendship we have."
Well, thank you, Charles. That's so kind.
And Ellen is asking, where will a recording of this be available? And that'll be on the Sherry R. Books YouTube channel, probably in a couple of days. We'll be announcing it. And Ginger and Buzz Glasky said, thanks, and Jay Bava.
And Michael Siegel is uncharacteristically quiet. He has nothing to say. I'm teasing you, Michael. I'm so happy you're here. And by popular demand, Elwood, as we are wrapping up, Elwood wanted to say hello. Say hello.
Elwood.
He's not looking at the camera. he's camera shy. Yeah, say hello. Say hello. Hello.
Charles, when I sent out that announcement of this talk with the picture of you and Elwood, someone wrote back and said, "Did you mean kiss by dog?" Elizabeth S. says, "I just got the book but haven't gotten to read it yet. If the story of touching Baba's feet is not in the book, can you please share it?"
Oh, well, good news. It's in the book, and it's one of my very favorite stories. I'm not going to tell it now, but I tried not to tell several of the stories that I really feel people should just read and enjoy. So I tried to choose ones that fit with what I wanted to share, but that was one that that was one of the most meaningful experiences of my life with Baba, is that story. Gosh. But here as we wrap up, I really, Judy, I just want to say I did read, and thank you for your comment to me. So beautiful. And I understand completely. I'll have to do this. Anyway, I'll send that to you, Judy. I sort of wanted to just end by going back to where I started and underscore, because this is so sweet, and the questions, evoke so many things about my experience and what I felt and so forth. But I feel like that when you read the book, you will, I hope, feel this is about Baba and a child. And I happen to be that child, yes, but it's about Baba. And it says something about him and gives some fragrance of him that only an experience with a child could give. So that was the aim of the book, and I hope that comes across in reading the book and experiencing the book. Not my memoir. I'm not going to write a memoir of my life, don't think. But I did want to write a memoir of Baba, of him, how he was so compassionate, so loving, surrounded by people, making each of us feel as though he was there just for us. And I feel that's what he does today. That's what Baba does now. He makes us each feel like he's here just for us. So thank you all for being here today and for sharing with me this this joyful project that Sherry R. made possible.
Thank you, Charles, for spending some time with us and sharing such beautiful stories. And for everyone else who came to join us. It's been really great. Thank you so much. Jai Baba. Silent clapping.